Silver and Black today, an Odyssey original podcast. Also listening to us on 98.5 The Fan and 1140 The Bet in Las Vegas. So we talked about Aaron Rodgers in the first segment, so we decided, you know what? Why not go to somebody who knows the situation much better than we do? So we're going to go out to Green Bay now and bring in Pete Dougherty. He is a columnist covering the Packers at the Green Bay Press-Gazette. And Pete, the chatter with Aaron Rodgers, it's a yearly thing. And I don't know if there's fatigue in Green Bay over what Aaron Rodgers is going to do, the retirement, all this. Now it's turned to trade speculation. There was some 49er rumors. Of course, he shot those down over the weekend. The Raiders are now coming up. Devontae Adams, his former teammate, is tweeting out all kinds of funny stuff, which I think is all pretty much joke and tongue-in-cheek. But nonetheless, it's brought up a lot of opportunity and a lot of conversation around Aaron Rodgers, perhaps stopping in Las Vegas. Where are we from your perception and you covering the team? Are the Packers indeed going to trade him? What are the chances, and what does your gut tell you at this point about the team moving on and maybe turning over the reins to Jordan Love?
Yeah, I guess where we are is, one, Rodgers is supposedly deciding, whether he's going to play. I find the likelihood of his retiring to be, zero. I mean, I just can't imagine, no matter what he says, I can't imagine him walking away from $59 million. That's all he has to do is show up. It's guaranteed. So I just, that's not happening. So then is it here or is it with another team? The Packers have say in this. What they do could have some sway with Rodgers. They might tell him they want him back, but they might make some personnel moves or tell him of personnel moves they're going to do as far as moving on from some veterans. And he might take that as a sign, because he said he doesn't want to take part in a rebuild. So he could take that as a sign of, that the Packers are rebuilding instead of reloading, is the way he put it. So then he might ask for a trade, or the Packers might have decided that they want to move on and give Jordan Love his crack at it. And then they'll tell him that whenever when he lets them know for sure that he's playing. As far as what's going to happen, your guess is as good as mine. I mean, really, if I just absolutely had to make a guess, I'm guessing that they trade him, but other people, colleagues of mine, think the opposite. And we're all just making wild guesses. I might be guessing that because that's what I think they should do. So maybe I'm just imposing myself on that. So I don't know. But it'll be, the decision's probably going to come down in the next, maybe 2 weeks at the earliest. And, but for sure before free agency starts, I find it hard to believe that they would let this, move past that. I mean, I guess there's always a chance it could go up until before the draft, but
right.
What they do here and what any team wanting to acquire him, that it could affect what else they do in the offseason. So the sooner the better, I think, for all parties.
Hey, Pete, it's Mo jumping in. Sorry to just hop in on you, but putting your GM hat on, you said you think they were going to trade Aaron Rodgers if you had to take a guess right now. And I just wanted to ask, what do you think it would take to acquire Aaron Rodgers? Because there are a lot of Raider fans out there who believe it wouldn't take much. I'm of the belief that you're going to have to give up at least a one for a guy who's won 4 league MVPs and says he can still play at a high level. There are Raider fans out there who say, well, we can give up a middle round pick. And I'm just like, wait, stop. It's going to take a lot more than that.
Yeah, and that'll depend on how many teams are in the bidding. The more bidders, the more actually all he needs 2 if they both really want him. I went into this last week. I called 4 scouts who I really, I've had a long relationship with, really respect their opinions. And I went into it thinking, maybe they'd get 2 2s, a 2 and a 3, something like that. All 4 of them said at least a 1. 3 of them said they ranged anywhere from a 1 and a 2 to a 1 and a 4. So I'm guessing these guys know what they're talking about, and they're probably a lot more in the ballpark than I was going in.
Again, Pete Dougherty from the Green Bay Press-Gazette is our guest. We're talking about Aaron Rodgers. And you look at Aaron Rodgers now. Let's give fans and our listeners in Las Vegas sort of the assessment of where he's at. I mean, he's 40 years old. We just saw Tom Brady step aside at 46 years old. Aaron Rodgers coming off a year, I know that the Packers didn't have the best year. He didn't have a lot of tools there, or didn't have enough tools, depending which argument you take. But when you look at a 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers, what is he now versus what he was 2, 3, 4 years ago?
He doesn't look like the player that he was even a couple of years ago to me. He still throws the ball really well. His arm is as good as ever. He can throw all the different angles, all that stuff. He's obviously, smart, really smart, and he's even more experienced now every year you add to that. The thing that really made him special all those years was his ability to make plays outside the pocket. He'd get outside the pocket and he could throw the ball right on the money, going left, going right. That was clearly what set him apart from all his peers. He doesn't, because of his age, he's just not as mobile as he was. He can still do it. He still gets outside the pocket and make plays. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but he just can't do it on command like he used to. He can't carry the team like he used to. He could still, if he returned to the Packers, my guess is because they, once Christian Watson got over all his injury problems, their offense was a lot better the second half of the season. If he comes back, I'm sure they'll win 10 games, maybe 11. I still think something will be missing. So I think he's got to be surrounded to be a championship threat, he's got to be surrounded by a little better personnel than he's probably going to be here this upcoming season. That's one of the reasons why I think the Packers would just be spinning their wheels if they stuck with him.
So Pete, I know this is mostly about Aaron Rodgers, but let's play the scenario if the Packers keep Aaron Rodgers. Would you say then that means Jordan Love would ask for his way out, or would they consider trading Jordan Love, or is it you keep both of them, have Aaron Rodgers for 1 year, and then you have Jordan Love on that 5th year option?
Yeah. So Mo, I have trouble seeing them. Everything I've heard is, they're not letting Love leave. And yes, Love could ask for a trade. He really doesn't have much leverage. The only leverage he would have is, he can't not show up. The fines, at that new CBA they did a couple of years ago, the fines are prohibitive. You start missing camp days, and it's just, the fines you'd pay there's no way it's worth it. He could do a hold in where he shows up and says he's hurt and doesn't play, and that could be a problem and a distraction. And, you don't need your locker room problems like that. Would he actually do that? That's a big step. And I don't know if he would or not. Most guys won't do it, but some will. 2, I'm thinking that if the Packers like him as much as they say it, as much as it appears just hearing through the grapevine, that they'll work out something with him contractually, maybe even this offseason, just to appease him and to let him know that he's going to be the guy, like you said, when the 5th year option kicks in, which everything I've heard is they're either going to exercise that or they'll have some kind of new contract in place for it.
Pete, also let me ask you this, because I know just like Raider fans are so loyal, Raider Nation's so loyal, and you have the cheeseheads out there in Green Bay. So where are fans with Aaron Rodgers right now? What is the sentiment? Because I know every year you kind of go on this Aaron Rodgers watch. Is he going to come back? Is he going to retire? All this sort of stuff. He's also obviously gotten a lot more outspoken on certain things, his spots on the McAfee show that he does. What's the overall pulse of the fan base there and what they think of Aaron Rodgers? Would they be very, very upset if he left, or is it kind of reached a point where people are at an impasse and kind of like, well, if he goes, he goes. If he stays, he stays?
So there hasn't been any, like Gallup poll or anything like that on this, but I've tried to, kind of get a feel for what you're saying. I do weekly internet chats where readers can submit questions. So going by the tone of those, going by the tone of what I see on Twitter, I always ask, acquaintances, if I haven't seen anybody for, a few weeks or a month or whatever, I'll ask them, what do you think? What would you do? What do you want the Packers to do? I'm getting the sense this is a lot different than when they moved on from Favre in 2008. And I get the sense that it's maybe 60-40 that people are ready to move on. That's, I'm just kind of making this up, but just going by, a feel of these things. I'm guessing it's about 60-40 that people would prefer to move on. I think going 8-9 last season has a lot to do with it. And, a lot of fans see an older player who they think who's in decline. Some of the other things you mentioned, the McAfee, his lying about his COVID status and all of that. I think that eroded his fan base a little bit. All those things kind of add into it. So that's just the sentiment I get is, maybe 60-40 Packers fans are ready to move on.
Yeah, it's really interesting too, sort of the similarities. I mean, obviously very different players with very different resumes, but Raider fans, much the same way with Derek Carr, who's a younger quarterback, obviously not as accomplished, hasn't won like Aaron Rodgers or gotten the MVPs, all those awards, but a very similar situation in Las Vegas, and Derek Carr is going to be moving on as well. Do you think did the Packers go, and are they going to also, if they trade Aaron Rodgers, is it going to be Jordan Love without a doubt, or do you feel like they're going to bring somebody in there too to compete with him?
Last year, if they had done it, I'm thinking like a Vegas trade would have made a lot of sense, and getting Carr would have made a lot of sense. This year, I'm thinking they've got to see Jordan Love play. Now, he played the fourth quarter of a game at Philadelphia. I think it was about halfway through the year, maybe a little more. And he played well. He looked good, like way better than he had at any point before. He looked poised and comfortable. He looked better in the preseason than he had in the previous regular season and preseason, but he looked better in this game than he did in preseason. And they've been seeing him in practice every day, so they've got to have a decent feel for him. So unless they're bluffing everybody, which is always a possibility, I think they've got 3 years of sitting. That's real. That's getting pretty far. I can see it happen with Rodgers. He sat 3 years, but you don't, going any farther than that. If they make the trade, there would be no reason not to play him. I mean, if he's not ready now for a look, then he's never going to be. If they made a trade with Las Vegas and acquired Carr, well, for one thing, that contract would be prohibitive. But
yeah.
A guy like him, that would be a sign that they do not think Love can do it, which everything I've heard is they think he's got a chance.
That's great. Pete Dougherty from the Green Bay Press-Gazette. Pete, thank you again for doing it, man. We'll catch up with you if anything happens down with these two teams.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks for having me, guys.
All right. Thanks. There you go. The great Pete Dougherty spending some time with us here from Green Bay. We certainly appreciate that. And just good insight there, Moa. Whether or not this happens, the Aaron Rodgers watch happens in Green Bay every year. Now it's happening. Folks in Las Vegas seen a lot of fans getting excited about the possibility of Aaron Rodgers. But we'll have to wait and see. But we could, as Pete said, we might know here within the next couple of weeks.
It's pretty good that he confirmed my thought, because I thought I was losing my mind when I saw Raider fans saying, yeah, we give up a third and a fifth rounder, we can get Aaron Rodgers. And I'm like, are we talking about the same Aaron Rodgers that, not too long ago won back-to-back league MVPs? I understand the Packers didn't make the playoffs and they went 9-8, just missed the cut.
Yeah.
But Aaron Rodgers is still regarded as one of the top, 10 quarterbacks in the league. You're not giving up. If you offer a third and a fifth round pick for Aaron Rodgers, the Packers are going to pick up the phone, laugh at you, and hang up the phone because that's not going to be nearly enough to get him, even with his contract. Because as he said, really quick, if the Jets are in the bidding war for Aaron Rodgers and the Jets are willing to outbid, unless Aaron Rodgers says, I don't want to go to New York, the Packers are going to pick the best offer on the table.
Of course they are. Yeah, no question. And by the way, I think the Raider fans are confusing what it would take to get Aaron Rodgers for what the Raiders might take for Derek Carr.
That compensation, a third rounder, is closer to what Derek Carr's trade comp is than Aaron Rodgers, despite the disparity in age, Aaron Rodgers being 39 and Derek Carr being 31 years old. Yes,
absolutely. But again, like I said in the first segment, I don't think they should get Aaron Rodgers, but that's just me. You can read about it today on sportsnot.com, by the way. Anyway, shameless plug. All right, we're going to step aside for our final break. When we come back, we're going to close out the show. We're going to talk a little bit about the Pro Bowl. I know the Pro Bowl. I know. Josh Jacobs had some choice words, 4-letter words about the Pro Bowl. We're going to talk about that too when we come back, as well as some hodgepodge stuff. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to Mo and Scott. This is Silver and Black Today, an Odyssey original podcast.